Bum, ba, 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 bum. All right, so episode 2, Disengage. Star Trek Picard. Welcome, guys. My name is Josh. I am your host. But before I begin, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button. Also, even if you have not watched this video yet, please hit it anyway. That way you won't forget. And I'm here. I will always be here if you want to hit that bell so y'all know that I exist on the internet. Great. Cool. Awesome. Let's talk about this episode because last week I reviewed the first episode of Star Trek Picard. Um, After years of getting underwhelming to terrible Trek, it's a breath of fresh air to get something that feels familiar. But it is the first episode, so first impression is always the most important. However, how does the second episode follow after something that was, like I mentioned, a breath of fresh air, something very familiar, something that felt like Star Trek? And after what, almost 20 years since 2005, in my opinion, we haven't had something like that. That Rick Berman, aspect of Star Trek. However, it is still in the confines of Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek, the cinematography, the dark, hallways, all of those things. But story always matters. Character comes first, story comes first, all of those things. So, how does this measure up in comparison to the first episode, which I thought was fantastic? This episode, guys, I liked it. I liked it. I didn't love it. However, I did like this episode more so than the first episode. There were minor little nitpicks here and there, but all in all, as a whole, I thought it was an episode that reminded me of the good old days of Next Generation, the drama between family and all of those things. I thought it was well executed. Some of the dialogue was a little clunky at times, especially when it came to the villain who we were introduced to in this episode, which I have some sort of uh, hesitance when it comes to this character, but hear me out first. But before I get into that, I thought that this episode, first and foremost, did focus on what it needed to, what we were left with in the last episode, which was, who is Jack Crusher? Who is this guy? Well, this is a spoiler review. So for those of you who have not seen the episode, I urge you to go back and watch this right after you're done. But you don't care, which a lot of people don't. Hey, let's talk about it. Jack Crusher is Picard's son. And I kind of knew this at the end of the last episode. It was kind of obvious. If you have watched The Next Generation, you understand Captain Picard's relationship with Beverly Crusher, the times that they've spent together, all of those things, the way it was written between those two. I thought it was handled brilliantly. Although in the next gen feature films, we really never saw those two really ever have a moment. Yes, they were talking to each other, all this stuff. Even in Nemesis, they kind of touch on that they do have history, but not like that, just history and Starfleet, all of those things. But that's really about it. Really wasn't much. So in this episode, it really goes back to the next generation days of Crusher and Picard, and hardcore, man, because right there they have a moment when it's revealed that this kid is Picard's son. Even Riker is trying to tell him, like, do you not see what I'm seeing? The elephant in the room. And so, kind of like where the audience is at, like we kind of suspected, but we don't really know. But as the episode unfolds, as the dialogue continues, all of those things, you get a feel that this is where it's going to go. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, this is just kind of, this isn't the major, twist in the story or anything. This is in the second episode. So, within the first act, if this was a movie, this would be the first act of the film, is that you find this out early on, so that way we can get into the adventure and what the story is really truly about. um Jack Crusher is portrayed by Ed Spielers, I believe, who does a good job. I think that he does have a lot of charisma. He brings a little bit of the charm of his own, but also you can kind of see the Picardisms, and his decision making process. It's not in your face, but if you understand this character, if you've watched TNG, if you know Picard and all of that stuff, it's just weird because when you look at that, you're like, whoever wrote the dialogue is, which we all know, but whoever wrote this dialogue understands that this would be Captain Picard's son. This is this is this makes sense. So I thought that was great. Captain Shaw, who is the captain of the Titan A, the Neo Constitution class. I think that the actor who is portraying him is terrific. I think that the character of Captain Shaw is not a black and white, two-dimensional character. He kind of reminds me of that gentleman who played Dick Jones in RoboCop. He was in an episode, in a two-parter episode, when Picard was held hostage. Um, he reminds me a little bit of that character, but not so much so, not yet. We still haven't seen the character fully developed. But what is the mystery behind this captain? I mean, as far as mystery goes, what is his gripe against Picard, Riker, the Enterprise history, all of that stuff? I mean, he was a complete dick in that first episode, but in this episode, in the second episode, we kind of see the another side of him in sorts. I mean, it's still continuing from the previous episode, but you do see another side of him in sorts of where at the end he decides to just make these choices, and it wasn't. I was afraid that it was going to go into that Alex Kurtzman Star Trek where, he's a villain because he's intimidating, he yells a lot and all this stuff. And it's like I said, he's not a two-dimensional character. He's interesting, and he's somebody that I want to see more of as the show unfolds. Um, you could see there is a humanitarian side to him, and he makes those choices in this episode. And I thought it was written well. Um, Also, we're now Raffi's character. Raffi was a character that I could care less about in seasons 1 to Picard 2. I thought she was in fact, I thought she was one of the worst Star Trek characters ever written, ever made, all of that stuff. And it's not the actress's fault. I think the actress does fine with the material that's given to her, but I just couldn't really get behind Raffi. In this episode, in the previous episode, I thought, okay, she's back. They still have to kind of keep some elements of seasons 1 and 2 of Picard. Um, yes, 7 of 9 and her did have a relationship, and they are no longer together, so she mentions that, which reminds you of the atrocities of season 1 and 2 of Picard. But her mission in this is something that you automatically kind of connect with. Not so much so in the first episode because you're a little traumatized about how her character was handled, but in this episode, I thought it was interesting. And I liked what her character has to do. I like that because of her, we are reintroduced to Worf again. When she wanted to take matters into her own hands, Worf told her to not pursue it, to disengage, hence the title of the episode. So I thought that was awesome. I mean, I kind of knew it was Worf. There were key words when she was communicating with him in the first episode. So I thought that was, I mean, it didn't kill it for me or anything, but I just knew that that was going to happen. And I love Worf. So I was like, bring it on. If that's the case, great, cool. And so Worf makes a brief appearance, comes in, kills everyone in the room, takes Raffi, and pretty much says, "I told you not to not to engage." And when you hear that Klingon theme kick in, that's a theme that we haven't heard probably since Star Trek Insurrection. I want to say back in 1998. So to hear that Klingon theme kick in again, with Worf there, baby, that was just. It was awesome. Now, you could have Alex Kurtzman Trek, and if you throw Worf in there, and you could throw the Klingon theme in there, but if it's not written well in the end, then it doesn't really matter. So I hope that Worf does pay off in the show. I hear that people that have seen the first 6 episodes, 10 episodes, how the fuck did you all get access to that if you guys are not part of the press? I don't know, but good for you. They say that Worf steals the show along with Captain Riker. So I'm looking forward to seeing those elements. Perhaps maybe for me at the end, he may not be my favorite. Who knows? But I'm open to see how this is going to play out. Now we are introduced to Amanda Plummer's character, uh, who Amanda Plummer is the daughter of Christopher Plummer, who played General Chang in Star Trek Six: The Undiscovered Country. Uh, And so to have that connection is pretty cool. She kind of does look like her dad at some points. If you kind of squint your eyes, you're like, "There's General Chang." But she was Honey Bunny from Pulp Fiction. For those of you who do not remember, remember. So yeah, so she did an okay job. I mean, this is the first appearance, so I'm not going to say, well, this is a reflection of what it's going to be because I haven't seen the rest of the episodes. But I will say that for her introduction, I thought she came off creepy. She came off unsettling a little bit, but at times a little mustache twirly villain like. You know what I mean? Like I just thought that, smoking in the on the bridge and stuff like that. I didn't mind that. A lot of people online, I've seen some chatters saying like, "Well, why did they introduce smoking in Star Trek?" And here's the one thing I gave Star Trek Picard a free pass in my brain and heart was the fact that that planet that she was on in Picard season 3. That was already established already in previous Star Trek. I want to say it was Enterprise. Enterprise was the one that introduced that. So it's not so different. It's not like they just went and said, "Oh, it's 2023. People got to smoke and do drugs to be cool." No, that's already existed in Trek canon. So that that's fine. But other than that, I mean, there was a lot of things in Picard season 1 and 2 that they were just wow. It's amazing. That's why I'm reviewing this show because this is, I mean, from the get go, from the first episode, it is a clear difference that this is Star Trek. This is the universe where humans have evolved. Okay, nobody is talking about pronouns. Nobody is correcting them on their pronouns. No one is correcting people on words and usage because the mankind has evolved. This is a world that isn't ours. Now, Star Trek has been tackling on some social issues which are just blatantly obvious, and they are thrown in Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, as if they are current day problems. Star Trek is supposed to be an example of the human evolution. How by the 23rd century, this is how our universe, our world, which is separate because Star Trek is not our world. Okay. And that's the thing that I think that Alex Kurtzman and company don't understand is that if you watch the original series, they kind of establish things that have happened in the 90s that we didn't experience. We did not experience. Um, Khan, Noonien Singh, and all of those things happening because this is not our world. Star Trek is a universe that isn't ours. It's not our history. So to throw our real life problems and thrown into Star Trek, it's just strange and weird. I mean, you can do allegorical stories within the science fiction setting, and tell a good story because of that. You can watch Star Trek and a really well written episode uh, makes you think, makes you wonder, instead of telling you how to think and you should think like this. And that's what current day Star Trek is doing. Now, this particular Star Trek show, Picard season 3, this is a space thriller. So it doesn't really take the time to sit there and give you you know, a lesson on things, but there are elements within the characters, situations that we can all aspire to, and you know, um, and see how humans and can figure things out together. It's wonderful. It is. And that's so far with these two episodes, I get those moments, but ultimately we're getting a really entertaining series here where we have Picard and Crusher at the end of this episode. There's a moment. There's a moment. And here, let me bring this up here because, oh, if you guys notice here in the introduction of this, let me go back right here. The subtleties. The Shrike, I think is what it's called. Yeah. So I like how they all did this introduction because Star Wars has their own introduction. It's one of those things. Um, but anyway, so let me fast forward here to this moment. This was my favorite moment of the episode was when you see the moment between these two and you just understand that you don't need words to tell the audience what's happening. Smart writers write for smart people, and the audience ain't dumb. Okay, they want to play dumb, but they're not dumb. And this is a moment where you didn't have to have any words. It was an exchange between two people that was very similar to their introduction when you see Beverly Crusher walk into the Enterprise with Wesley Crusher behind her. And there was the exchange of looks. Now, Picard isn't the father of Wesley Crusher or anything. Who knows? But he isn't. But this moment brought me back to that moment, and it worked so well because of what was happening, because of the narrative, all of that stuff. So that moment was so powerful, and I remember watching it, and I welled up quite a bit. Okay, I'm not somebody who has a lost son with a former friend. I don't have to identify by being a bald man. No, it got me. It got me. And this was the thing about Star Trek that felt very next generation to me. So I enjoyed this episode very much so. We get Seven of Nine, who does a lot more in this episode. Like I said in the previous episode, she feels more like the Seven of Nine from Voyager than she, you know, does in the previous seasons of Picard. Look at her; she looks like she's sleeping right in front of the captain. No wonder the captain wants to demote you. Wake up. Okay, there you are. But we get great moments between these two, Captain Shaw and Seven of Nine. The situation that she helped Picard and Riker, do what they have to do. Now the Titan A is stuck in this situation, uh, you know, being threatened by Amanda Plummer's character. That if you don't bring in Jack Crusher, who is a bounty, they will destroy the Titan A, and they have a ton of phaser fucking fire to just obliterate this ship. So what do? Jack Crusher wants to beam himself aboard to not risk the lives of this crew, which is very Picard-esque. But it's one of those things where we were left with pretty much, you know, um, a cliffhanger of sorts of what's to come. Because this is not an episodic adventure. This is an entire movie that is going to be played out in 10 episodes. So I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm curious to see how the characters, if this is their final adventure, their final voyage, where they all go. Where are they going? Sorry, I burped a little bit. But where is this all going to end up at? Do I want anyone to die? No. Look at Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. Nobody from the crew died, and it was still a brilliant film. Uh, and it ended the original cast and their stories, it was wonderful. So I hope the same for this. And so far, with the first two episodes, and episode two being a step up from episode one, I think that it's going in the right direction. I do have maybe one or a few people out there who are commenting down there, uh, saying, because it's so funny that the people who complained against fans who are disappointed with the new Trek, now they're disappointed with them by liking this episode and liking the previous episode. And it's like they want this narrative that they want these Star Trek fans to be this, to be labeled as that. It's like, no, don't get nervous. It's just that Star Trek fans, for the majority, have found something that feels familiar to them again. And in 2023, it works just as it did back in 1987. So I hope that this inspires course correction when it comes to future Star Trek. I mean, Terry Matalas, I doubt that he will take on another Star Trek show, or if they'll let him, because if they are actually watching the critics, the audience, the scores, the numbers for this show so far, I mean, Alex Kurtzman has to sit there and think to himself, we didn't get this with Star Trek Discovery or Strange New Worlds. What does that tell you? Does common denominator mean anything to Alex Kurtzman or anyone at Paramount Plus? I don't think so. It's all about the message. It's all about using Star Trek and to use current social day issues to solve an issue in the future. Doesn't fucking make any sense whatsoever to me. I don't understand that. If they want to do that, they should just make a separate sci-fi show that takes place in the 22nd century, and you could deal with those things. Not that I'm going to watch it, but I'm like, what do you're using Star Trek as a platform to do these things, to what, cure the world? Like, do you guys really think Star Trek Discovery is going to be like the show that cures everything? Make an entertaining show. Make a show that we can all watch and question and wonder and all of those things. And so I'm not saying that this show may do that or this particular season will do that, but so far it feels familiar again. So yeah, it's great. I think that this episode, to me, like I said, it starts to get the ball rolling a little bit. I hear that that begins to happen even more so within the fourth episode going in. So and there are a few things that I kind of know of that I was told. So I want to see how those things play out, as opposed to hearing it. I can imagine it in my brain, but to see it play out, I'm curious. So yeah, guys, go ahead and tell me what you think of this episode. Do you like this series so far? Do you not? Do you still think it's too early to even think that this could be great? Are you still traumatized by past Star Trek, that you can't even give this a shot? And if you, listen, I don't blame you, and I won't argue with you. It has been rough, but I peeked into the first episode and I just sat there and continued watching it for 5 minutes. Then 5 minutes became 10 minutes, then 15 minutes, and then 20 minutes in, I went, wow, okay. Didn't get that from any previous Trek, not even, yeah, it's just been, it's been a dud. So this is a nice breath of fresh air. This is only going to happen once. This is an anomaly. So but I hope I'm wrong. I hope again that this not only inspires Paramount to get their head out of their asses and actually hire writers. I hope that this inspires. I doubt it. Lucasfilm, Doctor Who, and a lot of other franchises out there, and shows and movies out there that are just really worried about check marking things. No, just tell a good story. Tell a good story. Write some compelling characters. Watch what happens. So, anyway, thank you so much for watching. Even if you disagreed with me on this review, I thank you and I appreciate you for watching anyway. Please, 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 like I mentioned earlier in this video, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button, also hit the notification bell. I will be back, of course, next week with another review for this, but I will also be back with movie reviews. I just saw Cocaine Bear. I will give my review for that. And Yeah, that's all I've got for today. So I will talk to you guys later. Bye bye.